Hey everyone, Matt here from Dr. Running, and today we're going to do a comparison review, or should I upgrade episode, of the New Balance Rebel version 4 versus the new Rebel version 5. Now the Rebel series has been obviously a bit of a rebel because instead of going super maximally stacked, plated, all this kind of stuff, it stayed fairly flexible and lower stack height relatively. I guess you call it moderate stack height by today's standards. And stayed on the lighter end when a lot of shoes are getting heavier, taller stack height, much like stiffer plates. So it's been a really fun, flexible, lightweight trainer that a lot of people have liked, especially if you don't want a ton of shoe underfoot. Version 4 was a big change because it had a wider midfoot than the prior versions and actually felt quite a bit more stable, but stayed in the lighter end while getting a little bit softer. Version 5 moves a bit more traditional. We'll explain what that means. These are similar, but they are different, and the purpose of this review is to help you figure out if you're interested in one of these, should you get Rebel version 4 on sale, or should you really consider version 5 at full price? So let's start off with specs first. I took these measurements in my men's size 10. The Rebel version 4 is coming in at 7.9 ounces, or about 222 grams. Version 5 is heavier at 8.3 ounces, or about 234 grams. The stack height is also different. Version 4 is coming in at 34 millimeters in the heel, 28 in the forefoot for a 6 millimeter drop. Over in version 5, this version is 35 millimeters in the heel, 29 in the forefoot for also a 6 millimeter drop. And if you told me before I saw the specs that the version 5 was only 1 millimeter stack height higher, I would have not believed you, because the biggest differences in these shoes comes in the ride and the underfoot feel. Version 4 was nice. It was very well balanced where, yes, the feel cell in this version is slightly softer, but it felt lower to the ground. It compressed nicely and just felt there was a really good proprioceptive feel underfoot. It was lower slung shoe. Again, 34 millimeters isn't low stack height. It just felt lower to the ground, faster, light. Version 5 feels there's much more form underfoot. It almost feels like it's a little more version 4 essentially. Like it's a lighter version of that, where much lighter obviously still than a lot of those other shoes, but there's just a ton more soft cushioning underfoot. And that was apparent the second I put it on. I've got 20 miles in my pair. That really hasn't changed, where it's still, if I would say this is the more bouncy of the two of these, the version 4 is the one that just feels close to the ground, just a little bit faster for a different reason, which is really, really interesting. Both still feel light. They're really, really nice underfoot because they feel like they can turn over, but also be trainers. Version 4 is going to be for people that just want that close to the ground feel. Version 5 is for those who want a lightweight trainer that's actually a little bit more flexible than the last version, but also has a soft ride, and you get more bounce rather than the ultra lightweight feel of version 4. Don't get me wrong, it's still light, but it just feels much softer and bouncier. The other things that are still similar, the heel transition is buttery smooth. It is really, really nice. With this version 5, with the increased amount of stack height in the heel, it still has that really nice angled posterior lateral heel bevel that just transitions super smooth. The midfoot's still wide, so from a stability standpoint, this is not bad. It feels a little bit less stable than the previous version because version 4 had a bit of a higher arch. There were some sidewalls, they weren't that significant, but the wider midfoot really made up for it. Version 5 has much more sidewall action, which is noticeable, not as high of an arch, which is really nice for people that get a little bit more irritated with that. So a little bit more guidance, the wider midfoot offsets this, but the softer sole makes this shoe just a touch more neutral than the prior version. So if you felt like the midfoot was too stiff in version 4, version 5 has that, but the softness helps it transition a little bit better through that area and a little bit smoother. The forefoot's also a little bit different, where version 4, it's flexible, just a little bit stiff. Version 5, actually more flexible underfoot. Again, the softer sole seems to compress more, so if you want a little bit more flexibility, I would go with version 5. If you wanted that touch of stiffness while still being non-plated and still being relatively flexible, I would go with version 4. So softer, bouncier over in version 5, lighter, little bit snappier underfoot, a little bit lower riding in version 4. When it comes to the upper fit, they are actually fairly similar. And again, the differences are even more subtle than the midsole, where version 4 had a fairly wide fit for a lot of the shoes on the market. The forefoot was wider, you could really spread out your toes. Midfoot was also wider, so I did have to lace lock the shoe. And eventually, actually, as it broke in, all I had to do was tie down the laces. It was fine. Heel was really, really nice. Not snug, but just really nice and secure. Version 5 slightly goes the opposite direction, where it's not narrow, it's not a normal fit, it's just not nearly as wide as version 4. So while this one, some people complain of a sloppy fit, version 5 has a lot better security throughout the length of the upper. Forefoot's just more normal width. There's still plenty of room for your toes to move. The tongue in version 5 is also a little bit thicker. I didn't quite like that because I felt like the medial side was pushing in a little bit on my foot compared to the extremely light tongue of version 4. But what is nicer about that is the midfoot is more secure. I didn't have to lace lock this shoe. I haven't had to tighten laces, just slip it on and go. It's totally fine. Little more padding around the heel in this version. So again, security is a bit better over in version 5 versus version 4. But if you want more room, I would go with version 4. If you have a little bit more narrow foot, version 5 might be better. Finally, the outsole is the last difference. There's a lot more rubber coverage on version 5 versus version 4. Version 4 was notorious for things getting ripped apart. This version has about 30 miles in it, and you can already see the outsole getting shredded quite a bit. Version 5, this is 20 miles, and it's actually holding up much better. I will get more miles to see if this heel piece comes off, but so far, it's actually been pretty good and it's holding up really well. There's still a lot of exposed midsole, so I'm not gonna expect the shoe to have the highest durability, but it does feel like it's doing a teeny bit better than version 4. Overall, they are still quite similar. The biggest differences between these two are gonna be in the midsole. Version 5 is much softer, much bouncier underfoot. Version 4 is going to be lighter. The fit's going to be just really minor differences. Version 4 is a little bit more room. Version 5 is a little bit more secure and maybe a little bit more durable in the outsole. I think this is an interesting evolution. I'm not surprised the stack height went up. I'm not surprised the shoe got softer because that's just how the industry goes. So if that's something that you wanted, you didn't feel like there was enough in version 4, great. But if you're like, hey, I just want something lower to the ground, I want it simple, I just like what I have, you can totally get this shoe on sale. They're both really good options. We're gonna have a written review really soon. As always, please let me know in the comments below, do you agree or disagree? The shoe, I think, is gonna really polarize people who have been Rebel fans for a while. I think some people are gonna like it, some people might not. I'm really curious to know what other people are saying and what you think. Last but not least, hope this stuff is really helpful because the goal of this is to help you educate you on what shoes are gonna really work for you because we want you to be able to figure that out, forget about this stuff, go on the run and enjoy it.